Welcome to Passion and Purpose with Pamela, celebrating all things woman. I'm Dr. Pamela Hardy Shepherd, here to ignite inspiration through conversations that spotlight women's power and their journeys. Let's share our light, our stories, and create a space of celebration for every woman. Here's to embracing our womanhood together. In this episode, we're thrilled to feature Dr. Kecia Edwards, a prominent figure in the healthcare, education, and leadership sectors. With extensive experience spanning over 2 decades, Dr. Edwards has cultivated a rich career in healthcare administration, teaching, and client success leadership. Dr. Edwards' academic background is as impressive as her professional endeavors. She has earned degrees from Lander and Webster universities, including a BS in healthcare management and an MA in management and an MBA. Further, advancing her expertise, she achieved her doctorate of philosophy in human services, specializing in healthcare administration from Capella University. In her professional journey, Dr. Edwards has played a pivotal role in enhancing healthcare practices and leadership. Throughout founding Grace for Purpose Consultants LLC, she has dedicated herself to mentoring and developing the next generation of leaders in the healthcare sector. Her efforts have led to notable improvements in organizational culture and strategic planning, significantly reducing turnover and fostering environments where success and growth are paramount. Beyond her professional accomplishments, Dr. Edwards has embarked on a deeply personal and challenging journey into motherhood. Faced with the hurdles of fertility treatments, as a woman of color, she has navigated the complexities of IVF to welcome her great joy, Grace. Her experiences sheds light on the significant disparities in healthcare and fertility treatment, inspiring her advocacy and support for other women facing similar challenges. Join us as Dr. Edwards shares her insights, her experiences, and the powerful lessons learned from her professional and personal experiences. Her story is one of determination, leadership, and unwavering pursuit of purpose, offering inspiration to all who face obstacles in achieving their dreams. Welcome, Dr. Edwards. We are so pleased to have you here. And I've already introduced you, and I would like you to just tell the audience just a little bit more about you, if you would.
Hi, Pamela. Thank you so much for having me here on today. Who am I? Let's see. I am Kecia Edwards. I am a healthcare advocate. I am also an adjunct professor. My degrees expand in the healthcare administration profession. However, my passion in healthcare is in regards to disparities of care within the marginalized community, especially the Black communities. And so that's where my love and passion resides. Hence, the reason for my dissertation was around breast cancer, the impact of breast cancer in African American women. As a result of that, my mentor and my chair saw something in me and told me, you know what, you would be great at teaching. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is like hearing my mother's voice in my ears. Because when I was getting ready to go to college, she told me, you need to be a teacher. And I was like, Mom, I don't think I'm equipped to deal with students, the little people. However, God has a funny sense of humor. And of course, now I deal with the big people. So that is a blessing that I truly enjoy. And as a result, all of that healthcare administration as well as teaching has now thrust me into a career in technology, dealing with the learning management systems and the specialized area of OB. And that's just who I am. And I am a IVF mom, a single mom by choice. So that is who I am in a nutshell.
Wow. Oh, this is so exciting. So, can you tell us a little bit about being a new mom with the IVF process and what is that like? Because you had talked about, um, you know, uh, just talk about it. Just, yes.
Well, being a mom, that is something I think most, I'm not going to say all little girls have that desire to be, but I always had that desire to be a mom. And unfortunately, it did not happen in the way that society
Mhm.
dictates that it should happen with marriage, the nice big house, the white picket fence. When COVID hit, it really, we all were still at home. We couldn't go anywhere. And it really allowed me to focus and pursue things that I would not have normally focused on doing because you're so busy handling and being in life. And as a result, I decided, I wrote in my journal in August of 2020 that for my birthday, I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to start the process. And so I started it. And of course, I wasn't dating. And I am what many would call in the IVF world, it's titled SMBC, which is single mom by choice. And I went ahead and I did Google and I looked for a clinic nearby. And of course, at that time, COVID is going on. So you had a lot of virtual visits. And so I had a virtual visit with a provider, very nice provider, did my blood work. And when it came back, he only gave me only one option. Wasn't happy with that because that's the one thing about being in healthcare. You need a second and third opinion and you have to advocate for yourself. And so that's what I did. I contacted my OBGYN. I just had my annual physical and I sent him a message in my chart and he responded and gave me another option. When I decided to explore the second opinion, I then contacted my very own colleague, friend, and sorority sister, Dr. Pamela Hardy Shepherd, to join me on that visit, that consult. And that is the journey that I explored. And so I think it was November of that year of 2020, I started my process of becoming a mom, which was one that no one really tells you about is the mental, emotional, the physical toll that IVF has, the testing, um, the evasion of who you are as a woman because you're constantly, if it's not needles, someone is probing. And so it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Mm. However, it is the most rewarding role that I have as a mom because when I wake up in the morning, I hear that little voice, I hear those little steps, and that lets me know that life was good, but life is so much better as a mom.
Mhm, mhm. So what I heard you say is, yes, all the things that you endured in the process, but it was worth it. And would you do it again if you had an opportunity to do it again, sharing that with people? Because if it is so difficult, why would you go through it? I know you already answered that, but I want you to expound on it some more.
Well, Pamela, I'm going to take it, I'm going to go in another direction. I'm going to come back.
Okay.
As women, when we have conversations in our 20s and 30s, we're really talking about, oh, what is the guy like? Oh, is he handsome? What is his occupation? But we really never have conversations to talk about if you don't get married by 25, if you don't get married by 30, have you thought about preserving your eggs? Those
Mm.
are conversations that we don't have. And I would say in the Black women community, because I cannot speak for any other races. And it didn't happen with me and my girlfriends when we talked. Are you going to apply for that new job? We talked about everything else, even our sex life, but we never talked about what if it did not happen on your timeline.
Mm.
For me, motherhood happened on God's timeline. It was always going to happen, but it wasn't going to happen when I want it to happen. And it happened over the age of 40. And oftentimes, if we hear the doctors, they say, oh my gosh, you're geriatric, you're this, you're too old, you shouldn't this, you should not do that. And even society
Mhm.
has given us a label that we as women do not deserve or should even embrace. So over the age of 40, I went along this journey. One, I was matured. Two, I was financially able to do that. Three, I worked for an employer that one had benefits, I have fertility benefits. Two, has an unlimited PTO benefit. Three, when I was off for 4 months, paid time off. So it afforded me not to have to worry about, oh my gosh, 6 weeks, what's going to happen. And as we all may not remember, for those who have older children or those who may not have any children, your child had to be on a wait list to get into daycare.
That's right.
So for me, would I do it all over again? Yes. My village looks different than most. My mother's deceased. This will be 21 years since my mother has transitioned to glory. It is hard. It is extremely hard. Being an only child, not having any siblings, my closest family member is 3.5 hours away. However, I do have a village, but it looks very different than most.
I love that so much because you actually have told so many things about, just being a woman and going back to that. We never consider about preserving our eggs. Who is telling us that? That isn't something that ever comes up in conversations because we all think either we're going to have kids or we're not going to have kids. We're going to be married or we're not going to be married. We never have those conversations. And what you said is so powerful because young women are coming up today, and with all the issues with the Dobbs decision, it brings havoc on what women want to do and our bodies, and how it's going against our choices and what we want to do. And if you want to discuss that, I would love to hear what your thoughts are.
One thing I will tell you, Pamela, I'm going to answer that question, but the one thing that we don't also talk about is our diet and our
Mm.
decisions. So for me, I am grateful that I never did drugs. My habit, my addiction was retail therapy. So that did, that didn't impact my health. So I
What's your
say that
thought?
because being in these communities for people who drink a lot,
Mhm.
who smoke weed or recreational drugs, it can impact your
Yes.
egg quality. But see, let's just talk about this. In hindsight, I thought it was the women was the reason why you cannot get pregnant or could not have a baby. But going through this process, it's also the male has a part of it too. So
Yes.
your diet, what you put into your temple does impact what will happen. Um, I have five. So the process is they retrieve your eggs. So for a woman who doesn't have a partner or say, you know what, I want to wait till later on in life, you can just freeze your eggs.
Mhm.
And the process is very daunting because you have to give yourself needles. I tell most women you're going to get away from those cute little outfits because elastic waist is going to be your best friend because it's making your midsection expand so you can create all of these eggs so that you can preserve them.
Wait,
Now,
I need to ask you a question. When you say give yourself needles, what do you mean? So that
excuse me, you have to give yourself injection of the medication. For me, it was in my arms. Some of my IVF friends in their stomach. It's just different places depending upon the clinic. So if you are nervous and scared of needles like I was, I had to play Ty Tribbett because his music is like get you pumped. And that was how I was able to do it. And of course, I had to look in the mirror because oftentimes I was all the way off of my skin and nowhere near my skin doing this injection. But you go through that. And then you have to go to the doctor's office every 2 days. And then what they do is an ultrasound because they want to see how many eggs or follicles that you're growing inside and then measuring them
mm,
because they want to make sure they're a certain size before they retrieve them. So for me, I had fibroids.
mm,
I only had one egg, and they tell you all you need is one egg. And so they retrieved that one egg, but my egg did not make it past day 5.
mm,
So
mm.
they were like, and I was at the highest dose of medication. And so they were like, you can't put your body through this. You need to go have your fibroids removed because no matter what, the fibroids was not allowing any growth in my uterus for anything to grow. So that's what I had to do. But I also made the decision of do I want to go through this again? Or do I want to now consider donor eggs? And so that is the route that I decided to go through was donor eggs. So what I'm considered in the IVF world is a DD. And I said, what does DD mean? Donor egg, donor sperm. So 2 double Ds. Yes.
Wow, not breast, ladies.
No, not breast.
Not
Oh,
breast.
I forgot. I did not answer your question. So I live in the state of North Carolina. Currently, we have a Republican Senate and House. They have, I think our abortion rights now is like 12 weeks. So if I needed to get an abortion, I have up to 12 weeks. But after that, nothing happens. I have 5 embryos on ice. I know the quality of the embryos, but I don't know the gender of the embryos. And so IVF is very expensive if your employer doesn't pay for it. What I had to pay for was the donor eggs and the donor sperm. And so the donor sperm was over $1,000. So when you start talking about the donor eggs, because I use my clinic, and what normally happens, which I'm glad I did use my fertility clinic, they look for people who have the same features as you do. So they just don't say, oh, well, we'll just pick Pamela, because I don't have any features that resemble Pamela.
Mhm.
They also look at my genetic testing to see what genetically, positive and negative. For me, I am the carrier of sickle cell. So I
Mhm.
had to make sure that donor, either donors did not have sickle cell, because you're like, well, that's not your child. She is my child because my blood was feeding her
Mhm.
life. And so that's what happens. Now, I did see, I believe in Alabama, they passed a law where they say the embryo is life, is a person. It's not necessarily the case, especially if it hasn't been tested. Because once again, to test the embryos, um, the quality of the embryos is free. But if you want to know the sex and different things, that's an additional cost. And so some people, just like myself, we just roll the dice like, hey, I've already put out 10K, whatever it is just going to be. And
Exactly.
so for me, I did not know the gender, but I had a wonderful pregnancy.
Wow. Wow. This is so fascinating because so many people really do not know about the process. They don't know the joy, the pain, sometimes the downfalls. They don't know the emotional roller coaster that you would go through and how your community actually will help you in this process. Do you want to share any of that?
Pamela, you were part of the community. I had a very small community, maybe 5 people that knew what I was doing. I am a woman of faith. And so I didn't even tell my pastor, didn't even tell a lot of my family members about the journey, because as a woman, being a mother, that that defines who you are. And sometimes religion, as we can see politically, they're telling you, well, if you can't have a child, something is wrong with you. Well, if we read the Bible about Rachel,
Yeah.
the Bible about Hannah, and we
Mhm.
read the Bible about Sarah, we can see that this is not something that's new to women.
Exactly.
And so we have to be mindful of that. And so for me, I kept my community very, very small. I was a part of numerous IVF communities. So when my transfer took place on September 28th of 2021, I muted all communities that I was a part of.
Mm.
I did not run and take a pregnancy test, because in many of the IVF communities I'm in, for everybody is testing. For me, emotionally, I could not handle seeing a not pregnant line, because experiencing the loss of my mom, which was the heaviest, the most traumatic thing that I've ever went through as an only child, to see not pregnant was not going to be an option for me. So my mindset was pregnancy is the only option. So before I even started the transfer, even during the IVF process, I would always bless my womb. I would
Mm.
always say, I am going to be a mom. I only spoke positive affirmations. And so that was another reason why I had to keep my community close and very small, because if something would happen, oh, girl, you should not do this. Oh, see, that's God, this, all that's God, that. When I found out that my embryo didn't make it, my community said, okay, let's take a break. You need to grieve this.
Mhm.
Let's
Mhm.
grieve. What do you need? Okay, brush yourself off and let's move forward.
Yep.
Because what we don't know, I went through IVF. There's some women that go through IUI, And what that means is you can be at home. You have to regulate your temperature and you just utilize the sperm and you do your injection at home. That's an option. But because of my age, that was not an option for me. Um, what I also realized, a dear friend of mine just became a mother in December of 2023 through adoption. So, Pamela, I know you have 3 children. Your experience is different than mine, but we all have reached the same destination, which is motherhood. And that is something that we don't talk about enough, that if a woman is not able to bear a child or have multiple miscarriages, we often sometimes make her feel bad and shame. But our calling can be different, and it is oftentimes different. And that is something that we as women should embrace.
I love that you talk about this because there's many things in the Black community, those conversations do not take place. They don't, it's just like a given that you will. We don't talk about a lot of things. And what you're bringing up is so important. And to have that community with you that's going to be positive and that is going to support you in what you're doing, because I love that. And this is something that I always talk about. Who are you around? Your circle. It is so important that people that are in your circle that are going to lift you up, that are also going to tell you the truth, but also say, okay, well, like you said, okay, let's take a break and let's get back to it. Unfortunately, when you're young, you're not thinking so much like that. Maybe the generation today is better equipped, but I know we were not so equipped. Our mothers, depending on what, even my mother was an OBGYN nurse. There's a lot of things she didn't talk about, and that we have to find out and try to have a conversation. So with you doing the IVF process, I believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the people that you could actually talk to without being in the communities was very limited. And many people haven't had that. And so I understand why you kept your circle small. And that was so smart of you to do that. Either you're going to be with me on this journey or you're not, because you can't be in my circle. So you can say anything to address that. But I just want to say that because it's so important who is in your circle. And you also said something that is so powerful about our diet. I really believe when you're at least 12 to 16 is when you're really thinking about being a mother. And for the most part, people don't think like that. We're eating junk, we're doing all these things. I mean, even the food that we eat today is detrimental to our health, our food, our toxins, and all those things. And then you want to become a mom. And then who you are around in those times. Because motherhood and being pregnant takes a lot from your body. I know I'm saying a lot, so you just jump in any place you want to jump in and address anything. You said some really powerful things, and I so appreciate you and your transparency and your willingness to talk about this, because we really need to know.
And we have a lot to do in regards to talking about it. There is Dr. Lane. She is in California, and she's one of the, I'm not saying there are not other Black fertility doctors, but she is one. She has an Instagram page that I follow, and she talks about it, talks about the donor process. She talks about, how you go about it and what the different processes and examinations that you have. And that is so key, because to see someone that looks like you. And another thing, let me just also go back to this. When I had my consultation with my second provider, what also allowed me to know this was the right place I needed to be, he said, if you believe and you have faith. So, of course, I understand that a physician, they're very mindful about proclaiming their religion, because, of course, we're taught religion shouldn't be allowed in the workplace. But when he said that, that allowed me to know I was in good hands. What it also did, a lot of times people don't do their research, so they say things that can be a bit cold and condescending. Like, why aren't you a mother yet? Why aren't you married yet? And what people don't understand, and I have learned this, is that you can go and get married to the wrong person and
Yes,
have a child, and you're almost like a single mom yourself. And I'll
exactly.
never forget that when I went into the office because my numbers were off, my uterine lining, my lining would be good, but my numbers would be off, or my numbers would be off and my lining would be good. It was just not sinking. And I went in and I met with him and I was like, y'all wasting my time. I'm a single woman up in here. And, you know, I'm just tired because I don't think y'all are answering me. I mean, he just allowed me to just vet. And he just looked at me. And when I stopped, and he said, do you know how many times there are two people sitting across from me and only one wants that child?
Mm, mm.
And when there are times when I am at my lowest and I'm like, God, did I make the right decision? And I remember that moment because I am never alone. He said, you have me, you have the people in this office. We are a phone call away from you, we're an email away from you. And it just brings up emotions because a lot of times when you, like I said, you're going through a process where someone is invading your private
Mhm.
part, your need. I mean, I felt like if I'm not getting sick, it's just like you don't have any privacy at all. And that just reminded me how important that you have to have the right people around you. Um, as I stated, a dear friend of mine, when I started, she had her second miscarriage,
Mm.
second, and she was still going. And she turned 41, I think, last year or this year. And she had her little girl. I had Grace in May, and she had her little girl in December. So even with those different setbacks, when you encourage one another, all things are possible. And it all is about timing. And Ecclesiastes 3 talks about timing. And I tell women, you do not have to feel bad that you're in your 40s and having children. Now, in the DMV area, women over 40s, that's just the norm. I mean, to see a woman, because that's an environment where you have class status. I'm in little rinky dink Raleigh, North Carolina.
When you
So,
said DMV status,
well, in DMV, they have class and status because normally they're working for the government or high paying jobs or in um, high level positions. Pamela? Oh,
yes, I'm here.
they're either high, good paying jobs, and they have dated and they've just made the decision to, hey, now I'm ready to have a child. But in North Carolina, to be a single mom by choice to do this, that I'm in a southern state.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so they look at you, oh, God is going to get you. You're going to hell. You're not married. Um, because if you think about the church mindset, that is how it used to be preached.
Yes, yes.
And some people still have that mindset today in 2024.
Wow. Yeah, and you know what? After moving from California to Texas, I understand more than I probably, it's one thing to hear it, to see it, but another thing to live it and to have that understanding. It is just a little different. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. There is so much. Okay, so now you had Grace, who is simply beautiful and amazing and so smart. What is it like now to be a mom? And are people giving you all kind of advice or telling you this and that? And I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, it's different. So most of my friends and family my age, their kids are in college or in
Mhm.
high school. So it's like, I remember when we used to do,
Yeah.
I think this is, and so they have been supportive a lot. But on the flip side of it, many people at church, there was a young man and there was a young lady. Oh, that's your grandchild?
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I'm in church, just heard the word, and I'm smiling because I want to clutch my pearls
Yeah.
and say, everyone is not 13 when they have a child or 20,
Exactly.
some of us are not that. And that's something that we need to, I've never done that. I was like, oh, you have a beautiful little girl or a little
Mhm.
boy. Oh, that's my grandchild. I allow people to do
To
that. I
tell
don't think
you.
that decision never have, because you just never know what people's situations are. And so for me, that's how it's been, I must say. However, I get my biggest support from my IVF moms
Mm.
because we understand, we have the same stories, we have the same um, scars,
Mhm.
both good and bad. You know, as we talk about, do we want to have another girl? Are you crazy? I know. Are you crazy? But it's different, I would say. Let me not say. My mother was very protective of me as a child growing up. So if you had a brother, I could never stay over to your house. If
Mm.
it was just sisters, I could stay there, sometimes maybe overnight, sometimes not. But if there was a boy, never the case.
Mhm.
My primary caregivers was my grandparents. And I
Mhm.
remember going to my uncle's house because his wife had three girls. That was the gist of who I could stay with, all of that. For me, as a mom, 2 weeks ago, I had to go out of town for work and I was terrified because I'm like, I can't take my daughter with me. What do I do? So once again, my community is different. The little girl in her class, her parents took care of Grace and their daughter, so that was how I was able to go out and travel for my job. But we were laughing. He's like, no, you just don't leave your child. You think about all those needles, because I still have bins of needles, because you have to give yourself tons of needles throughout this process. And you just don't want to leave your child with anyone. So when you hear about people who cause harm to their children or do harm to their children, and you know the journey that you had to go through, sometimes it infuriates you. It makes you angry because that little person didn't ask to come here. You made a choice to bring that life and bring that little person into this world. And so we have a different stance in how we protect our children. If Grace starts to cry and someone says, let me hold her, and she cries, I don't give her to that person because she's telling me she does not feel comfortable. And oftentimes in the Black community, oh, give me that child. Let me take
Oh
care.
no.
Take care, let the child cry. No. So those are some things that as a mom, as a more seasoned mom, mature mom, those are things that I have noticed that is different.
I love that you actually differentiate that because it's so important because you can lay down and have sex and get pregnant and really not give much thought to it. But and I say that in the kindest way that I can. However, when you go through this process, you are intentional.
Yes.
You are emotionally into it, financially into it, and like you said, with the needles and all the things that you go through, and it is more of a journey. Whereas somebody who has sex and is with a boyfriend, or married or whatever they are, and they become pregnant, they don't give. I'm sorry, I'll just be perfectly honest. Sometimes we don't give much thought to it because it seems natural. No, and then you made a point about, you don't know who you're having a baby with. If I knew then what I knew now, that first husband that I had would not been a partner I would have selected. But you know what? God has made it a blessing for me to have three children. But when you're young, you're not thinking so much about that unless you have been taught that. It is not part and parcel. Once you lay down and you have a child with somebody, their DNA is there, and all of the things that you want for that child, and the environment that you raise them in. So being very protective, and I was one of those protective moms. So I get it. I will fight you if you look like you're going to harm my child. And to this day, my kids are so old now. Uh, I'm still protective. I'm still mama bear, but I let them navigate their own things, but I still would step in. So I understand that to a certain degree, but also more so, I went through all of this. I was so intentional to do this. I will not put my child with you. And I love that you differentiated that. That is powerful. And it's so important that we hear those important differences. And anything else that you would like to share about that? Because I know there is so much. There is so much.
The one thing I tell people today, and especially the younger um, men and women, that when you get ready to, this is the person that you want to be with, I always tell people do genetic testing. And they're like, why? Why? Because it prevents you from having any surprises at the time of birth. Um, it also lets you know what are some things you probably don't know. In our culture, Black culture, there are things that we just don't talk about. We just do not talk about at all. And it just gives you insight. For me, one of the things, and you were on that call, the doctor asked, did my mom have miscarriages? I don't think so. I don't know because she's no longer here. I know she had to have a C-section for me to be delivered, but I don't know about previous pregnancies. So that's even important when they're asking these questions. Ask your mom, did you have any miscarriages? Did you have any complications? Do you have fibroids, PCOS?
Mm-hmm.
Endometriosis is
Yes.
very popular in African American women. Diet, exercise, all of that is so important. When you are in your 20s, ask those questions. If you're having a heavy cycle, those are reasons why. As I said, I had fibroids. I did not know as a child. I think I was in the fourth grade when I started, and I've always had cramps. I've always.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I got in high school, I was very heavy. I did not know all of that was going on. I had fibroids, did not know. So women thinking that you have to have heavy cycles and go through a whole package of toiletries during your 5, 7, or
Oh,
40 day, that's not normal.
no.
But once again, not having these conversations, not understanding your health. But going back to the genetic testing, it just lets you know what you need to be mindful of. As I was watching a documentary the other day, and they were talking about Black kids and being on medication and being misdiagnosed for ADHD.
Oh.
The one thing that I can say as being a seasoned mom, I am very patient with my child. There is nothing to rush for. There's nothing to hurry, hurry, hurry. I take time with her. I'm on the floor playing with her. I listen to her. So you have to make sure, don't allow anyone to misdiagnose or put a label on your child. That is not something that you should um, be open to or even welcome. Do your due diligence. Find a doctor that you can relate to, one that you can trust, one that is very honest. And then you may need to take some time for yourself and your child to just see, hey, is it me? Is it the child? Do I need to be giving him or her more of my attention, more of this, more of that? They're telling you, but you have to understand as a young child, they don't understand or know how to formulate their words or thoughts as an adult. So those are very, I say, important nuggets that as a mom that I have been mindful of.
And I like that you also say that because being a seasoned mom, being an older mom, you're more mature. You have a lot of wisdom and you have a lot of knowledge. And when you talk about genetic testing, I can remember when we were 8 years old that we were tested for sickle cell anemia because my mother carries the trait. And those things are important because if the person that you link with and they carry the trait, your child may have sickle cell anemia. And so that was powerful. There are so many things, so Kecia, that you are saying that are powerful that people really, really need to think about. And I appreciate the knowledge base that you have and also the transparency that you have, because this is what women need to hear. They need to hear it because we don't have these conversations and they hurt us something awful. They do. And then as we get older, we're trying to navigate our health when if we had these conversations early on. Did your mother have this? I just recently had a conversation even with my son. You have to look at what your parents had. It doesn't mean you're going to have it, but that is in your gene pool, and there's things that you can do to to make sure that you don't express those genes. And so if you're eating badly, if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates and sugar and alcohol and all these things, they affect your immune system. So there's so many things that we don't have conversations. And then I say, what about somebody that can't afford to do this? How do we navigate the process? How do we eat healthy? What do we do if I live in a food desert? Well, what are my options to navigate this process? How can I do that? And I know it can be done, but I'm just going to ask you, what are your thoughts on
One of the things I would say is juicing.
that?
Um, you can buy vegetables. That's one of the things that you can do. Juicing is one thing that I have started to do, and have been very consistent about. Water. That was one of the things that my doula told me to do. Water, 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 water. I'm like, golly. And so I had this big old, those big water bottles that tells you the
Yeah.
time, and she's like, drink it. And when you get through, drink some more. I was like, but one thing I would say, I had a wonderful pregnancy, no complications. And my doctor would, women half your age is coming in here.
Yep.
They're complaining, they're swelling, they're this and they're that. And you're just bouncing in here like, ah, la, 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 la. Because I really understood the importance of taking care of myself. I was not stressed.
Mhm.
Um, that was one of the things. I made sure not to be stressed, but then it was COVID. So what am I going to be stressed about? That was very helpful, I would say. Yeah. Uh, and the one thing that I would say, as I was thinking about your question, so let me just back up about the part of the process that I did not share. So the day of the transfer was September the 28th. It was a Tuesday. Never forget it. And I had acupuncture. Oh, acupuncture is very
Ah.
helpful too. Acupuncture helped the blood flow in your womb area. So I would go twice a week just to make sure everything was ready to prep my body for this transfer. So I had my transfer on the 28th, and I took off that rest of that week and maybe another, probably half of the following week. Because the one thing they tell you when you have the transfer, one, you cannot lift anything over, I think, 15 or 20 pounds. And two, stress, no stress. Just be in a place of quietness, peace, all of that. And that's what I did. And I made sure of that. And that's one of the things that I tell women, make sure you do not have stress at all when you're going through this process. It can impact the transfer, it can impact your pregnancy. I know life happens, but you have to have a coping mechanism to just let it roll over off your shoulders, roll off your back, because IVF, it is just that delicate.
Mm.
You
Mm.
have, it's a very delicate process. And so you have to be mindful of that. Diet is so important. Walking, if you live in a rural community, most areas do not have sidewalks. But if you can walk around in your yard, just time yourself, put a timer on, or put a Fitbit on, and just walk around your yard. If you have stairs, just go up and down your stairs. A lot of times you don't have to be in the gym just swinging weights and on the treadmill. It's just the simple things that you do that can help with your pregnancy. Once again, listening to the right music. I love the sound waves. I could have massages. So I would go and get a massage. Doing things to relax you is what I would always recommend for someone that's going through this journey. For myself, Pamela, I don't think I shared with you, I have accompanied two women to my clinic.
Oh.
And so I have been that person to pay it forward because no one was there with me. I went through to all my appointments by myself, except my transfer. I had a girlfriend that went with me because they gave you Valium, and I did not know what kind of reaction I would have because of that medication. So she drove me back. And so that is so, so important, is the lack of stress. I did not have gestational diabetes. I did not have hypertension. I didn't have any swelling. The only thing they were concerned about was the fetal heart monitoring because my appointments were like at 1:30. And I was like, listen, I'm Black. I've had lunch. My
Oh,
child, we sleep. Okay. This is, it's called, we got the itis. My child has the itis. So
ah,
they would go and they would give me water. They would press on my stomach, and Grace would not move. Grace was like, I'm sleeping. I'll check y'all out later. So we had to change my appointment to a morning appointment before
mhm,
I ate. And
mhm.
that's when they saw the activity. It's like, oh, okay. I'm like, I know she's fine. She was never a very active
Active.
baby, but I could tell she was moving, but she was just chilled. And that's how she is today, just very chilled. So, yeah.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, you were so funny too. Anything else that you want to share? Anything that comes to mind? I know I could ask a lot of questions, but I don't want to do that. I want this to, if you had anything to tell this audience about IVF, about your mindset, about giving grace, your baby's name, to yourself, anything, um, the floor is yours.
The one thing I would say, motherhood is not hard. Let me clarify that. Um, if you don't have the means to do IVF, there are many forms whereas individuals are donating their embryos. And so, and you would need a lawyer in regards to that because documents would need to be drawn in some instances. They may want to be a part of the child's life. They want you to connect with their child to know about their siblings. Some it may be like no contact at all, and you have to respect that. And so that is an option. Like for me, if I decide to have another one, I will donate the remaining of my embryos to a Black family or a Black single mom because it is expensive. Not every employer does offer that. However, my request would be that the child would stay in contact with me for Grace to know their sibling. That's the only request that I have, and that they do not destroy them. Think about, this is an election year.
Mm-hmm.
Be mindful of your vote because it can impact whether or not your motherhood journey would be an easy one or even a more difficult one. So that is so, so important because it is a process. You have to test the embryos. And even though the embryos may be fine, maybe there's some complications where a woman keeps having miscarriages after miscarriages. In some instances, it may be just her body. And so that's why you have surrogacy what individuals go through surrogacy. We saw with Kim Kardashian. We also saw with John Legend's wife, Chrissy Teigen, how they had to go because of their body. That's also an expense. However, sometimes you may have family members that will say, hey, I know this is something that you want to do. Even with family members, get documents drawn up by
Yeah.
a fertility lawyer, not just any lawyer, because the fertility lawyer knows the laws of your state or states if they're across, I'm in North Carolina, let's say a family member in Georgia, they would have to know the law of the states
Mm.
if they're involved more than one for those reasons. Um, in most instances, like my clinic, they would not do it if you're over 51. So
Mm.
know that as well. Do not think that you have to be 20, you have to be 30. However you however you want your Picasso to look, you are the artist. Just go get tested and know what your options are so that you can make the right decisions. One of the things, Pamela, and I'll be, once it launches, I will be starting a nonprofit organization for this reason alone,
Mm.
because women over 40, we're often the forgotten. People were like, oh, you grandmothers, you shouldn't be mothers, but there are not a lot of resources for us. Like, for example, when I was looking for a travel system, and the travel system is the car seat that goes in the car, the base, and the stroller. Like, which was the best one? I didn't want the cutest one. I was also having a C-section. So which one would be lightest and practical? Many people like, I can't remember the name of it, where it's the car seat and the stroller. To me, I'm like, I work in healthcare. That stroller is on surfaces, that's germs, that's going to go on my car. No, I don't want that. So you have to think about all that. Do you want to breastfeed? Are you able to breastfeed? That's something that we don't even really talk about in our community. And I was part of a Black mothers breastfeeding group on Facebook to help, because when I had Grace, the lactation consultant did not even touch me to really show me how to breastfeed my child correctly. Fortunately for me, my insurance had a where I had a year of lactation consults, and the lactation nurse came to my house, showed me how
Wow.
to properly nurse my child. And so those are things that's a whole nother conversation, IVF
Mhm.
and that, but even breastfeeding. And I was surprised to find out that my younger cousins in their 20s actually breastfed their kids. And I was like, really? Did not even know that they were into that. So those are conversations that is so important. And I did it for up to a year. When Grace turned a year, then she stopped. And so, I understand formula is convenient, but once again, when I had Grace, there was a scarcity of formula.
That's
So
right.
for me, my prayer was, God, please allow me to have the capacity to be able to breastfeed my child. And he honored my prayers.
Wow. Wow. I mean, you are just so amazing. And I just want to thank you because you have said so many powerful things that are helpful to women, whether you want to do the IVF or not, just things to think about, just being a woman and having conversations. And I appreciate you so much, Kecia, because you've always been real. And we always have these conversations and we go back and forth to support each other because that's really what it's about, is supporting one another. And I just have to tell you guys, no, I won't tell you guys some of the things, that I've been knowing her for a very long time, and she's one of the most supportive individuals that I know. And we have had a long journey and a long process to get to know each other. So as much as I can support her, she has also supported me. And and I love the fact that you paid it forward to help other women in this process. And what is the name of your nonprofit? You mentioned it.
I can't really tell you
Okay.
the name yet because I haven't finished all the paperwork, but it will be forthcoming soon. Still
And
building
so what do I,
everything.
so I know I'm asking you questions that I probably shouldn't ask, but it's like I'm 42 years old, and how will you, I don't have any kids, I'm not married, I want to do IVF, and how can you help me?
I would definitely have them call me.
Okay.
If they're local, I would say, hey, this is the doctor's office I go to. Do you want me to go with you to your appointment? These are the questions that you need to ask. But my first question is, what is your overall health?
I love that. I love that so much. I'm going to tell you what you remind me of. In California, there is a program that I used to direct called the Black Infant Health Program. And in the Black Infant Health Program, because Black babies die 2.5 times more than any other ethnic group, what we had is outreach specialists who would go to the appointments with the pregnant mother, because what we found out and what we know is true, that doctors didn't always give our mothers all of the information that they need. They didn't tell them about the kit counts. They didn't tell them a lot of things. So that support is so important. And I love that's the component of what you're going to do. So we'll put your information in the notes. And if you want to contact Dr. Edwards, her information will be in the notes, whether it's on YouTube or Apple, wherever you look at your podcast, you'll be able to contact her. So last word for you, you got it. And then we're out of here.
You did ask me a question, I did not answer it, so I need to go back to that. There
Okay.
are grants that help people with the process for IVF. I don't remember the names because I did not have to use them, or I did not qualify for them because of my employer. But there are grants that do help people with IVF, the cost of it. So that is something I would just definitely tell people to look up, Google and look for those resources because they are available. Two, when you're starting to do this, please begin to look at daycare, start interviewing daycares, put your name on a wait list, even though, well, I haven't done it. Put your name on the wait list because you can always get dropped to the next person, so that your child will have a place to go. In my closing thoughts, I would say one of my favorite scriptures, it says, all things are possible to those who believe. And if this is something that you are desiring, just believe it. Words have power. And he also tells us your words are, you have power, life and death are in your tongue. So I would say always speak life. And it doesn't even have to be in motherhood. Speak life into everything. As Pamela shared, I met her along my journey with going through my doctoral process. And when I got to the comps phase, I said, failure is not an option. And I did not fail my comps because of my words. So that is one thing that I will tell you. And if you do decide to wait later on in life to become a mother, know that you are not a unicorn. You are just a rare diamond, like a chocolate diamond. Not everyone can have or be exposed to you. And so just know that you are a gem, and know that there is a baby that's waiting just for you. And that is the one thing that I tell my daughter every day when we talk. I said, you know, that God had you in this garden, and he knew that I wanted to be a mom, and he picked you just for me and me just for you. So when you have your children, just know that it was destined by God. And even though when they get older, they become their own little person, enjoy the hugs, enjoy the cuddles. Everything that you impart into them, in everything that you put into them, will be rewarded. And I see that, and she is just 21 months old. Just the love that she gives her peers when she goes to class, she hugs them. When they do something great, she's like, good job, because that's what she sees at home. So show them the positive. And there are days when I've had postpartum depression and I'm crying because I'm like, oh my gosh, those are emotions that I'm dealing with. And she hugs me. So just know that along this journey of motherhood, there is no perfect book. Pamela's journey has been different, is different than what my journey is. And my journey is going to be different than yours. But just know that if IVF is not the option, IUI is not the option, fosterhood, being a foster parent, maybe adoption is your journey. But do not give up on your desire to become a mother, because it's all possible.
With that said, thank you, Dr. Edwards. Thank you so much for being here, and we love you, and we'll look for you again. We hope you'll come back.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us today on Passion and Purpose. It's been wonderful to connect with you, and I hope you found our conversation as enlightening and inspiring as I have. A huge thanks to our guests who contributed to the discussion and shared their experiences and insights. Your stories are the heartbeat of this podcast, and it's a joy to explore our passions and purpose together. I'm Pamela, reminding you to live with passion and purpose. Until next time, take care and keep reaching for your dreams.